Oh, God bless. Thank you, God. I am alive today and here with you all. And this is going to make it to exactly who it has to make it to. And let's kick it off. Let's work. It's warning time. Warning. You are about to trigger a character system audit. Yeah. This session may override your default defense mechanisms. You may experience replays of emotional patterns you swore were resolved, sudden grief over the loops you keep labeling as growth, conviction around the feelings you've romanticized into identity. If this feels familiar, good, because it should. Because your loop doesn't care about your potential, only your repetition. Welcome to Raw for Epoch 2, Day 107. Emotional echoes. If it keeps coming up, it is coding your character. Journal recurring emotional loops and their source. Let me just make sure my mic is on. Been frustrating lately. All right. That emotion, it is not random. It is the ringtone of your subconscious, asking if you're ready to stop stalling. Here's our concept overview for emotional echoes. This session is a mirror, not for your face, but for your loop. We're not just observing emotion, we're tracing its repetition. And if it is repeated enough, it's not feedback anymore. It is identity architecture. So here's what we are unpacking. Emotions are not reactions, they are rehearsals. Emotional patterns run deeper than beliefs. They run your nervous system. Suppression, it doesn't delete the loop, it buries it deeper into system memory. And journaling is not reflection, it's loop tracing. If an emotion keeps echoing, it is not unresolved, it's unchallenged. This has been an emotional week. This is what this week is all about. Here's a visual metaphor. We call this the leaking faucet in the wall. Prepare to immerse yourself. Close your eyes if it helps and imagine this. Your bathroom sink starts leaking. You wipe it up, tighten the knob. The next day, there's more water. Weeks later, mold behind the wall. So what is that leak? That's your emotional loop. It wasn't handled, just hidden. And that is what an echo is. A system failure dressed in passivity. You don't need a mop. You need a demolition. Are you feeling that yet? Can you feel it? All week, baby. We've been feeling it all week. Here's my personal perspective. This is how I realized my high was a loop and my loop was my life. This topic's personal. They're all personal. Because for a long time, I thought I was just an emotional dude. I've always been tapped in, right? But I wasn't feeling deeply. I was feeling predictably. Hear that? Because here's the wild part. I realized I was scripting emotional experiences without knowing it. Not just through reactions, like we think we're just reactive. We have to get responsive, but I digress. But it's more through routine. I used to chase highs. I still chase highs. But I'm talking more the alcohol, the weed, the standard stuff. And I used to think it was just about the substances until one day I saw the full production behind it. The emotional ritual. Feel this, right? It was rolling the weed, grinding it, feeling the flame, ice in the glass, the bottle clinking. 9 p.m. arrival. It wasn't just about getting high. It was about orchestrating a predictable emotional climax. The high was the echo, like that leaky faucet building up mode. And everything I did, everything, work, parenting, movement, was built around getting back to that high. And I thought I was just relaxing, but I was rehearsing a loop of shallow relief, a contract with chaos that came with just enough dopamine to keep me asleep. And then I had to zoom out. I had to get a little mature. And I realized, you already know, I could still chase the high. But I could also upgrade what I was high on. So I started writing routines the same way I rolled blunts. Every rep became sacred. Every silence became a portal. I realized the real addiction was never the weed. It was emotional control. And I could design that. I could design a new emotional high rooted in authorship, not avoidance. Now I move 3 a.m. to 9 p.m. all day, every day, the same way I used to move towards the bottle. And how did I move towards the bottle? With intention, with pattern, with desire. But this time, my day, all day, every breath, shit, even when I sleep, it is the substance. My creation is the contract, and my high, that is presence. We're about to open up the black book on emotional echo. My shoulders, man. Let me just be clear. We're talking about the subconscious a lot this week and how the emotional experience essentially gets burned into your identity. And that is how, and really what we are pushing towards in some capacity, right? I want to be conscious and careful of how I message this. But in any line of business, any line of relationship, anytime you're looking to optimize, you want to go from reactive to responsive. And there's a significant difference, right? Response-driven and responsive-driven people typically come to presence more regularly. They consider deeply before they react. What causes us to be reactive? It's likely when something is very emotional. And if you know anything about what we've been talking about this week, the emotional experience, the subconscious is dictating the pace because it's 95% of our day. But it's dictating it based off the 5% of emotion we built it on. And what is likely that 5% of emotion we built it on? If you're struggling, even if you're having the greatest time of life, it's emotional, but likely really conflicted in fear-derived, fear-based consciousness. So if you're constantly coming to an emotional high through negative experiences, your subconscious is taking that, storing it. We know now that it's just data. It's unemotional about that. Point being, that's how you build very reactive rituals, very reactive emotional rituals. If you look at couples in relationships that struggle and are consistently, and I can refer back to when my wife and I, some of our darkest times, a lot of our conflict was very predictable. Even today, our harmony is predictable. We just talked about we're going from the fear-derived vibration and frequency to the love-derived vibration and frequency. And the journey between, it's a line across. It's not linear, but it's just a frequency. If you want to think North Pole, South Pole, right? They're polarities. So if you want to move from any one of the poles, north or south, it's just the opposite end of the other emotional experience. The same way reactive and responsive is just the opposite end. Or I shouldn't say the opposite, it's the polar. So anybody who's in an emotional sort of strain, especially relationally, it's very likely, if you pay attention, you're still arguing about the very same things. The way that fear has different derivatives, stress, overwhelm, worry, pain, frustration, right? All driven back to fear. Love and the harmony we seek and feel joyousness, abundance, right? some sort of unified interoperating level of peace. That is, it's all just where you're at on that. Point being, if I reflect back to some of my darkest times, there were very consistent patterns with how my wife and I would reach conflict, and very consistent patterns with how we approached it, which was typically very reactive. It was very heightened, it was emotional, and it didn't have any resolution, right? So you build the high off the frustration, you get very angry, you get very emotional, you don't really close the loop, you don't create conflict resolution, so you just come back to those same patterns. It's like the leaky faucet, and all you're doing is reacting to the emotion that is stimulated by your conscious, and you start to anticipate and expect that. And that's how you walk in, and there's so much tension in relationships. And you could scale that out, whether it's your friction with your professional relationship, the friction with your own mind, body, and spirit. It is so highly emotional towards fear-derived consciousness. It's so reactive. You build around that expectation. Imagine that too, that you're repeating these habits in your relationships, and you're building and tiptoeing around the conflict because you're trying to avoid it, but really you're just exacerbating it because you don't respond to it. You don't consider what's going on. You don't create resolution. And in that way, it just continues to echo. And what happens when it echoes? That's why that visual metaphor was so powerful. It's mold. It's drip, 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 drip. It is a lot of what the difficulties we struggle with. It isn't this huge waterfall. It's a drip, drip, drip. And the next thing you know, we're drowning. The way we compound wins, I talk about it regularly, is the way we compound losses. And then before you know it, you look back, and a lot of time has passed, and a lot of mold has built up. Consider my personal perspective too. The reality also is, we're not masochists. We look for positivity in our lives. We look for emotional stability. And typically we create routines that are very immediate and instant. That's why gratification was a big part of this week. That's why the emotional experience is a big part of this week entirely, because your identity is tied to it. And that's how we get into those very common and acceptable drinking patterns, those very common and acceptable substance abuse patterns. And we don't like to say it out loud. That's just once a week, twice a week, a glass a night, and then or the scrolling, or the unwinding, and the separating, and the detaching. Right? That's emotional friction too. We get high off that because that's the only time we can seem to resemble peace. It's not that it isn't peace. It's just short-lived and it doesn't scale. And eventually you look back and you'll say, what happened? I lost a lot of time. All right. Who's in the chat at 414? Ooh. Let's get into the black book. The echo. It isn't emotional. Imagine that. It's infrastructural. This is where we explain the mechanical structure of recurring emotions and how your system logs them as behavioral blueprints. I just went over this slightly. Emotions are rehearsed, not reactive. Your body defaults to the emotion it has the most repetitions in. That's not coincidence. That's emotional priming. Oof. If you run an audit on yourself, this is why presence is important. If you can elevate and become your witness, I talk about this, you can realize that you are repeating, you are putting in reps, emotional reps. You got to observe the emotional reps you're putting in. It is very likely that because of the way consciousness works and the way we attract exactly who we think we are and what we think we are, we prime ourselves. And the body starts to kick in the chemical cocktail and the experience of life, of how you feel, based on what it expects, because it knows what you do. It's not a coincidence. The second entry in the black book. Loops are deeper than beliefs. They are cellular. Every time you flinch and avoid, your nervous system installs the pattern. It becomes posture, breathing, gut reaction. I'm going to say that. It's my intuition. You've trained your intuition to believe that. That becomes your posture. The third entry, suppression does not erase the loop, it camouflages it. Buried loops show up in sarcasm, numbness, off days, and chronic fatigue. Of course you don't feel like it. It is likely you haven't felt like it for longer than you realize and care to come to consciousness about how you feel like it. I go back to that statement. What does that mean? I don't feel like it. What does that actually mean? What don't you feel like doing? You don't feel like living? You don't feel like feeling great about life? You don't feel like indulging in abundance that is driven towards peace and harmony and synchronicity? You don't feel like driving towards a love-based consciousness? You don't feel like connecting yourself, mind, body, and spirit? Oh, I know. That doesn't sound like hitting the lotto. Get off the slot machine of life. You can put in the work to feel better about yourself, by yourself, for yourself, through yourself, and it doesn't have to be anything that anybody else told you should do. You are the stimulant. And I get the social pressure. I get what it looks like. I get that, man, there's some things that we may never touch that appears to us and is shown to us. You got to get over that. You got to get over yourself. What does it mean to not feel like it? And then you realize why you don't have the stamina. You realize why there's chronic fatigue. Your battery is like, come on. At some point, the fatigue has to be around, I'm tired of the sick and tired. Let's talk about journaling as our fourth entry in the Black Book. Journaling is not emotional release. It is a forensic audit. Track the loop when it appears, what it triggers, and what identity it reinforces. That is your subconscious filing system. Every time I hear forensics, I think about, I grew up, the Forensic Files. My wife and I used to watch that regularly together. And I think it's called luminol, where they put it on the floor and all the blood that somebody tried to clean up with the bleach. They see all the blood stains everywhere. You got to run the forensic report. You got to become the witness. You got to understand what's in your subconscious filing system. You got to interrogate yourself. Then you got to track the loop. It is a loop, I assure you. When it appears, don't just like rush through the emotion. What it triggers and what identity is it reinforcing? I can't reinforce that point enough. You are more predictable than you give yourself credit for, that you like to believe because of ego. You think life is harder than it actually is. But you're going to be in the space you're in anyway, repeating some sort of routine, irregardless. It's just, do you want to push towards the polarity of love or stay in fear? There's a beautiful, inspirational, I think it was Marcus Taylor. He talks about choose your hard. It's all hard. But you can choose a level of hard and emotional stress that brings you towards weakness. That's just what it is. And fear-derived nothingness for your life. How about that? You can get a lot of nothing for a lot of something you put in, or get a lot of something for a lot of something you put in. You're putting it in anyway. Essentially what it amounts to is you're ignoring yourself. Probably, possibly, almost definitely, maybe because of how you feel. And you can't figure it out. You keep going to your thoughts. You keep looking around. What's around me? I don't have what I want. I don't live where I want to live. I don't floss how I want to floss. I don't have what I believe I should have. You haven't even gone back to where it starts, it emanates from. It's all emotional. You keep thinking it and seeing it. That is all predicated off of how you're feeling it. You're working the system backwards. And that's how you unravel it. That's why we talk about, especially in my business, anytime there's an issue and you want to run an audit, you reverse engineer it. You start from the front. the physical impact. You grab the device, the phone or the switch or the router like you have in your home. If you call Verizon or AT&T or whoever your internet provider is, I'm sure you got that at home, and you say my internet's not working, the first thing they tell you to do is check the plug. Are you plugged in? Do you have power? What kind of power do you have? And then they work backwards. All right, yeah, I got power. Do you have a connection? Is it all the way back at the home base, which is your internal system? You don't even get that far. All right. You do have a subconscious filing system. A lot of us don't even know that. Here's the fifth entry. Echoes are not unresolved emotions. They are challenged defaults. If it keeps surfacing, it's not asking for comfort. It's demanding a new command. Have you stopped to see what comes up, why it comes up, and when it comes up? It's very likely it comes up same place, same time every day. There are consequences, massive consequences. And here they are. If you don't trace the echo, you'll live in emotional deja vu and call it growth. Ay, ay, ay. You'll confuse trauma rehearsals for just how I feel. You'll build entire systems around shallow highs. You're going to try to get high. Nobody wants to stay low all the time. You'll swap true healing for quick hit relief, instant gratification. You'll teach your nervous system that stagnation is safety, and worst of all, you'll become emotionally predictable to the same loop that's already running your life. Staying still is not the option you want to indulge in. You don't want that level of abundance. See, we use all these powerful, over inundating words of receiving, as if we can ignore that we're not receiving the fear-derived lifestyle. That is generational curses. Stagnation and stasis, essentially your mind, go fight or flight, you freeze. You freeze and you run from yourself. And sometimes running is just standing still. Why? I talk about it all the time. Everything else around you is moving. You keep running for shelter, running for cover, thinking that somehow you're going to be saved. Nope. No one. I feel like I should just say it every day. No one's coming to save you. You got to save you. You got to save you. I don't care who's around you. I don't care what your network is. I don't care the resources you have. Nobody's going to pull you forward the way you can pull you forward, even if they have their hand out. And you don't want a handout. You also don't want to build that emotional pattern. Stop relying on things outside of you. And if you don't want to pay attention to you, pay attention to the people around you. That's fun too. You want to run a forensics test? Look how emotionally predictable everybody else. This is not judging. This is just pattern recognition, because we're all very similar, although we're very unique and different. Check the conversations you're having. Check how you walk away from them. Check into your emotional experience of life. Lord have mercy. The consequences are palpable. And here's what it amounts to. Here's what I'm learning, right? I don't think I got this from a textbook or a guru or a seminar. This is just me reading, paying attention, and being my own witness, right? The travesty of life, when we are fully focused and inundated only when things are not working and they're painful, and we're in this poverty-driven, fear-based, and fear-derived level of consciousness, is that the primary emotional experience of life is only when it's not going well. And then when we hit a high or we force a high, it feels almost like luck, like a broke clock. It's right twice a day. And so in that way, we're so fearful of all the pain and suffering that seems to constantly emanate from our lives and our worlds and our experiences, that we deaden our emotional experience. We'd rather not feel. That's what they talk about when they say we're dead, we're asleep. I shouldn't have said, I don't think they say we're dead, but you're sleepwalking through your life. That is stagnation and stasis. You flatline your feeling because you're scared that you're going to feel this constant pain. You're fearful that it's not going to work. You're fearful that you're not good enough. You're fearful that you're not really who you say you are. So you deaden yourself. You avoid the emotional experience. Why? Because it doesn't go the way you want it to go as often as you want it to go. Because you can't find true love for yourself. Because you can't return home. My house, my rules, all those things we talk about. Do you rules? Are you running the system or is the system running you? So when you can't run your own system, when you can't feel how you want to feel about your life because of how you want to feel about your life, you just kill it. That is what I'm learning. We're walking around not feeling because we're walking around not thinking because we're walking around not moving. And when you are devoid of emotion, with the exception of when it's just really painful, why else would you want to come to consciousness? Why would you want to wake up if every time you wake up it hurts? I get it. Might as well stay asleep. Those are the consequences. And then as you're sleeping, life is passing you by. And then as you're sleeping, if you want to talk about comparisons, I assure you, everybody is deserving of something. That's why I believe deeply in God and root and source creator. That's the image you deserve. Or excuse me, that's the image you were blessed with. You deserve something more for your life, even if you have as much as you think you want. And if you don't have anything that you think you want, you're going to wake up and see somebody else get it. The universe is like that. They're going to rub it right in your face. Why? Because that is the conscious level of life and emotional experience you bring towards the surface. You say, I'm not good enough. You reinforce it's not going to work out. You reinforce that, man, life is just making it very difficult for you somehow. And all these billions of people, and I believe I believe in all the, if you think we're the only ones running around this universe, whatever, for me, that's crazy. In any event, you believe so deeply that it's not supposed to happen for you. Life has to show you, yup, see, look, it's not only is it not supposed to happen for you, but look, this is what it looks like for somebody else. And you think it's some sort of cruel punishment. It's just consciousness. It's collective consciousness. It's the energy of the world saying, well, you said, we got to wake you up sometimes. That's true about the 5% too. We got to keep you 5% awake to remind you of what you already believe for yourself. And you believe you're not good enough. You believe it's not going to work out. So look, here you go. And then you're like, oh, man. You pick up the phone and you gossip. Or you pick up the bottle, or you throw a celebration and a party for one night to say, look, I can feel good. Look, let me celebrate. Look, let me indulge in love and joy and feel omnipotent for this couple of hours, and then wake up hungover. You're essentially walking around hungover on life. That's what happens when you deaden your feelings. That's what happens when you go to sleep. It's like you're hungover. There isn't enough amount. That's what I'm saying, that right? You can't get enough Tylenol and Advil for that. You're constantly walking around with a headache. And who will want that? I get it. I got it. 4:30 on a Thursday. I'm feeling blessed. And we're going to talk about how to take ownership. Ooh. Emotional echoes. That's what we're talking about today. Are you running your system? Identify your most frequent emotional state, not your strongest, your most repeated. Why? That is the loop. The second thing you want to do is trace when it first showed up. Where did you first feel it? You want to get deep? At what age? Who was there? You're not remembering trauma. You're reclaiming authorship. Yo, I assure you, I used to think a lot of this too was lip service. The more you spend time for yourself, the more you start to go back deep into things that you forgot were even possible to forget. And it's not all that traumatic, but there are, and this is why I thank God and I work so hard on my relationship with my children, because in the same way you can realize something happened to you at like 11, 10 years old. You don't think it's real, but a lot of times we get sort of imprinted on at a very young age, and we haven't even identified that that is what's creating the constant friction for us. And if it happened to me when I was 11, teen, and I'm 43 years old now, I could be sitting on 30 years of being told something that hurt. So my point that I was going to really drive is that's why I'm so cautious of what I say to my children. Because you could say something that could just destroy them for the rest of their lives that they can never get over. And they're wondering why. Because they stored it. They had a distraught, dysfunctional, massively, immensely powerful, fear-derived experience that they just like, whoa. They store that. They suppress it because what do you know at that age? And then you can't get over it. My point is, to reclaim authorship, if we talk about it's the drip, 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 drip of the faucet, how long has your faucet been leaking? That's the mold. So you sit with yourself and you know, the reverse engineering of where you are in your life, you know, you go like from 43 to 40. And then maybe you go into your 30s. You'll find yourself in your childhood. You'll find yourself in your childhood. And yo, sometimes you just need to hug yourself. You need to hug the 11-year-old version of yourself. And maybe you'll cry. Maybe you'll curl up in the fetal. Maybe you'll take a walk for 7 hours. Whatever it takes, though. That is how you start to reclaim. The third thing you want to do then, after you go deep, it's going to hurt. Track what it triggers now. What behaviors or escapes or beliefs follow it. That is the command loop you've been following unconsciously. Before we get into our phone tap, banca, bodega, certified. I talked about in my personal perspective. The rolling, the clinking of the ice. It's natural. At some point, you want to quell the struggle with some sort of behavior that offers an escape. We should all escape. I tell you again, not because it's trendy. My prayer is escape. My meditation is escape. Lifting weights is an escape. Running I was talking to my wife the other day. My running outside is glorious. Connecting with nature, feeling the air, taking a breath. Like, have you lost so much love for who you are that the breath doesn't feel good to you anymore? Thank you, God, I'm alive today. I get it. We need to escape, and life offers us an abundance of substances to help us escape. I also believe these indulgences have been created by people like us who think, how do I help myself feel better? And so all these things, social media, the alcohol, the parties, the socializing, I don't believe that they're rooted in negativity by nature, but it's the overindulgence of it. And then you lose the feeling of, that's why the tolerance level is so big. You can't, the one drink is not enough. You got to have multiple. Then you drink and you smoke. Or we talk about the gateway towards these things. We create behaviors. What are you trying to escape from? And whatever escape you create right now that is, I'll just say, not optimized for long-term sustenance. That's all it is. These unwind and detaching and, you know, I got to focus on me sessions that don't put you in a positive mind, body, spirit evolution. Yo, do it. But this is a command loop because consciously it knows, even though we feed ourselves a lot of garbage throughout the day, at some point we gotta make it worth it somehow. And we escape ourselves by releasing ourselves from ourselves instead of finding the escape within ourselves. That's why those phone calls are so big. I bet you if you just gave yourself some time, you'll feel the itch. It's like an addict. I got to make this phone call. I usually call this person when this happens. I usually text this person when this happens. I usually pour the drink around this time. I was so twisted that I thought like, yo, I'm not going to show my children I drink. I always drink when I only drink when they went to sleep. So here's what happened. 9 o'clock, like 8 o'clock. It started 8 o'clock. I could start to feel it. In an hour, I got to be in front of that bottle. So whatever I had to do, rush the kids to bed, scream them off to bed, get out of my face, ignore the wife, kick the dog. I did all that to get to 9 o'clock because 9 o'clock was my escape. Is there anything wrong with that? I learned not to like that. It's not a really good escape. 3 a.m. is also an escape, but the difference is I don't got to kick the dog or rush the kids anywhere. It's just me. That's the level of selfishness. In the same way, right? I was recording the other day. My son came out early. You know, you get a little frustrated. Like, yo, it's not that he doesn't belong here this time. I usually use this as an escape to ensure I don't take time from him. Point being, going back to, I digress from that. Understanding the escape, it has a trigger. You likely have just gone subconscious and unconscious about it. You're sleeping through it. Because we all need some level of feel good throughout the day. I'm not saying you shouldn't. Why wouldn't you want to feel good about your life? If it's the bottle and you want to keep on with the bottle, whatever. Or those friends that are draining you, whatever. I'm not here to judge. I'm just saying, identify it. If that's what you want to do, keep doing it. Okay. All right, banca, bodega, certified, phone tap. You got the call. Now move like it's recorded. We start with an audit. Audit the last time a recurring emotion hijacked your movement. For example, you didn't just feel frustrated. You felt trained to be frustrated on schedule. Yo, how many of us wake up frustrated in the morning because we don't have enough time? That's a 9 to 5 standard. I told you, I do the forensics. I have neighbors. Sometimes I go outside and sit on the porch right before I clock in at 9 o'clock. Let's say it's like 8:45. And I'll just watch the world. And there's a couple of neighbors who are like frenetically packing their car from 8:47 to 8:53 because they probably got to get somewhere by 9:30-ish. I'm presuming. But yo, same time every day. They were in the same place, same time, rushing the car, rushing the kids, snapping the buckles. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but of course that's frustrating. When you don't have enough time, that's frustrating. And logically, if you're like, yo, how do I not feel frustrated? Give yourself more time. But you're going to feel frustrated the first day you have more time. You're going to feel like you're forgetting something. I say this all the time. The minute you change the emotional pattern, if you don't move every day, if you're sedentary, if you're in a place of stasis, and some of us think they move because you got to work, but you opened up the garage, you got in the car, you drove to work, got in the parking lot at work, to the elevator, to the 10 steps to your cubicle or your office. And then you repeated that. Maybe you walked to the water cooler and the microwave to heat up your food, but then you got back in the elevator, to go back in the elevator, to go back in the car, to go back in the garage, to go kick the dog when you walk in. And you wonder why you're frustrated. Then we remix. Interrupt the loop by making a new move when the old echo arises. Example, instead of reaching for a drink, open your notes app. Write the echo. You're going to use your phone. Write the echo, name it, rewrite the outcome. Awfully and massively important. You can't just decide you're going to close an emotional loop and not reopen it with a different one. And what I would suggest, if we're going to the polar, like if you're a drinker like I was, but you decide I'm going to smoke weed instead, I used to do both. Well, you're substituting one darkness for the other. So you got to give yourself a love-derived emotion. You have to contrast the emotion that is bringing you down with an emotion that can bring you up. Sounds, Jeff. Try it. Try it. Watch how you feel. But the significance of the remix is you gotta go the polar opposite. It's a 180. It's an about face. So as you're witnessing, as you're auditing, what would be the contrast? If you don't move, move. If you typically drink and watch Netflix all night, you might want to go to sleep. Wake up earlier. It's removing one level of friction that you're unconscious and asleep to for a friction that you'll be conscious of, and it'll hurt for a little while, but eventually, like I said, anything uncomfortable becomes comfortable, even if it's discomfort. If you repeat it long enough, it's a new echo. If you want to let the faucet drip with some positivity. That's the point. Write the echo. Name it. Alcoholism. Or whatever it is you do. And then rewrite the outcome. That's how you re-script yourself. Then you want to re-record. Script a higher emotional state through structure. Example. Wake up at the same time every day. Don't scroll. Don't run. Sit in silence. And how about you say this? I choose this loop. Then build something worthy out of your echo. If you're going to talk to yourself, we talk about in this space affirming. Don't start affirming, I am abundant and my bank account is $7,634,221.12, unless you want to. But see how burning a candle, lighting an incense, and repeating that in your head gets you nowhere. Except for frustration when you keep looking at your bank account and you don't got it. Talk to yourself about, I choose this loop. I am abundant because I feel self-love. I'm magical. I'm creative. I'm thoughtful. I'm conscious. I'm dominant. I am ferocious. Stop feeding yourself abundance of material. Not that you can't have it, but what is it? What is required to get it? I am hardworking. I persevere. I push and power through the pain. I choose. I choose. I choose. It's my choice. I choose not to stay sleeping. I choose to wake up. And then when you talk yourself through this, build by taking action. Words and emotions without completing the architectural process of creation through movement is madness. It must all be harmonized. One cannot be out of sync with the other. The other will just tell it, you're a liar. Talk yourself through it and build something worthy of your echo. The echo is not random. It is not soft. It is not therapeutic. It's structural. It's neurological. It's spiritual. And if it keeps coming up, it's not unresolved. It's unquestioned. Own the system or be written by the pattern you never authored. Change your mind, change your life. I am who I say I am. Do you and stay rich.